Hello, this is Mystical Empress Sheris Farfalla. Now I'd like to do a video on Akashic record readings, some of the experience that I've had. And typically when I do an Akashic record reading, I often pair that with shamanic entity clearings, and I'll tell you why. Because when someone calls me with a problem and it's concerning entities attached to their auric field, I like to go into the Akashic records after clearing them to find out soul purposes for this attachment. I like to find out if there was past life connections. And I'd like to find out if there was a soul agreement with the entity that was attached. So that's my reasoning. And this week, I was doing a tarot party, which I'm doing very little tarot anymore. I'm really trying to get out of tarot altogether. But this lady has had me come to her house for 3 years in a row for all of her friends. Well, it worked out pretty good because while I was there, several of the ladies were asking me broader questions concerning their soul purpose. Why am I here? Am I on the right track with my career? And I said, well, these are questions better for the records than just, mundane, simple answer, tarot spreads. So they all wanted me to come back and do an Akashic record party, which I haven't quite figured out in my head yet. But anyway, this week I did 3 different shamanic clearings, and I went into Akashic records after. And then I had another gentleman call yesterday for just an Akashic record. So I just kind of wanted to give you some of the highlights from those readings. And so let's see. In one of the shamanic clearings, this girl had been very psychic her entire life. She's got the gift of clairvoyance and clairaudience. She hears the voices, she sees the spirits and things. And she thought that she had these gifts because her mother passed them down. And her mother was into Wicca and magic and things when, she was born. But when I went into the Akashic records, I saw the family history of her current family. I saw Celtic Druid roots. I went right to Europe. I saw her a long hair redhead, very, very fair, pale skin. I'm not real good with historical eras, the times and the way they dressed and things. So I kind of have to wing it when I get to that and just describe what I'm seeing. And, sometimes the client actually knows what time period it was. And when I started talking about all of that, she knew because her family, had Scottish DNA, Scottish history. So anyway, when I went in there, though, I surprised her. Her gifts, her psychic gifts, her mystical gifts did not come necessarily from this plane. I saw that she was a star seed, a star being, and she had been in mystery school in the Pleiades. Another thing that came up was she had a interaction with a man, and a single interaction, single sexual interaction, and conceived a child that she was never supposed to have children. And when I went in and looked at his connection to her, he was also a star being, but he came from the Alpha Centauri, whereas she came from the Pleiades. But it made me tear up when I tapped in to how much love these two had when they were in their star dimensions. And it made her cry too, because their romantic connection is permanently severed now. But I told her the love was so great between them. And this little being that they conceived together was also from Alpha Centauri. So they had plans to come together in this lifetime. And unfortunately for the father, he has slipped into some very, very, very dark ways and situations. And she wanted to know how he would fare, and I told her that he would have one more opportunity to make the choice to step out of that. And I don't I never try to give people destined things that are going to happen, because that limits their human potential. I don't want to put anybody in a box. And so I didn't look to see what his ultimate decision is going to be, because there's multiple timelines and multiple dimensions and versions of him that can choose. So I wanted to leave that open, but I told her that he has an upcoming decision, and what he decides will determine his fate. I had a man call after her, and he got an Akashic record reading, and he really wanted to focus on his guides, what they looked like, who they were around him, and his purpose. He's a clairaudient that pulls in the music of the spheres. So he hears sounds and then creates music from them. And he wanted to know if that was even on track, if that was the right thing for him to do. And when I looked around him at guidance that he's receiving and support he's receiving, I saw this Egyptian thing, and I didn't know for sure who it was, because I haven't studied. I'm currently getting into Egyptian studies, actually. And this being I had seen in pictures, but I had never looked into it. Well, when I got off the phone with him, I looked at the picture up, and it was Thoth, or Toth. I don't know how you say it. And he wrote back and said, yes, I studied that deck, that tarot deck. Another of the beings that was standing there near him was a Greek. The best I could come up with was he was like a philosopher or something. He was a teacher, but I could tell by the way he was dressed, and I could feel the wisdom around him. And then this other little guy was just a normal human being, but he was kind of the stereotype for like a geeky, mathematics, scientific kind of person. And so we talked about what kind of information he could get. And I told him, I said, this guy that was so smart would help him with technology and mathematics and that whole musical thing he's got going on. And so then we moved on to the music, and I explained to him that what he's received so far has been just like the building foundation for him to learn how to bring that into this dimension. He's literally interpreting vibration. And I said, don't hang on to what you've already created, because it's going to refine now. And that he understood that that made sense to him. But I told him, yes, that's one of his gifts. But I also saw that he has healing gifts. He's got a lot of really powerful energy flowing through his hands, and I could see him working on people lying on tables. So this was the information that he got. But with the Akashic records, you can ask anything you want to ask. And when I'm viewing the records, it's just like the clearings. You don't know what you're going to get, and you just kind of have to let it flow. I did this other girl's Akashic reading, I think it was about a week ago, and while I was in there, I saw this man, and he had on when people drive trains, they have this little cap they wear. I'm sure it's called something. I don't know what it's called. But he had that cap on, and I saw him, not in current time, but I saw him in another time. And it was definitely in America, probably the early days of the railroad tracks. But I saw the train moving through like the forest on tracks. And, I mentioned this to her, and she said, that's my dad. I said, the guy's name's Charles. That's what he's given me. And she said, that's my dad. And she said, he has a little train, like a little train track. And I told her, I said, well, yeah, that may be so, but I think he was a train operator in another lifetime. So you just never know, and you just let it flow. And when I go in there with people, I take them to the records, a safe place for the records, a safe place for them to go to collect information on their own, because it's your records and you have a right to be able to access them. And so, while I'm working, I'm also teaching people how to get this information, because you can go into records to trace the history of the planet, to learn about different lifetimes, to learn about future lifetimes, to learn about a lot of things. You can't go into other people's records unless they're dead, or if they're like a child and the parent gives you permission. You're not allowed to just go dilly-dally, run around spying on everybody. You can't do that. But your DNA is connected to this planet, so you can learn the truth of the history of this world, and you can get a lot of wisdom on your own without having to weed through all the deception that's out there on the market. So if you'd like more information about my Akashic record readings or the shamanic clearings or whatever, I do a lot of different things. You can go to my website, mysticalempress.com. The Akashic record section's under psychic readings, and then I got a lot about it on the shaman page also, that you can review and, answer some of your questions. All right. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, sending you lots of angels, hugs, and kisses, and love. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.